What's up, everybody? It's your man J Rock, and I am here with my co-host Siege, and this is this week's edition of the J Rock Show. Siege, how are we doing, my brother?
Oh man, we're doing good on this Friday. I'm ready to roll. Weekend got a lot of good basketball going on. So, what do we got on the docket today, J Rock?
So today I figured we'd talk about some underperforming teams and kind of give our analysis and takes on kind of what the situation is and what we think they could do to kind of turn things around.
All right.
So Siege, what is one team that comes to mind when you think of maybe high expectations or unknown coming into the season and they just haven't really lived up to it?
Well, there's a few in mind. The first one I would talk about is because I had high expectations, but I think I want to talk about this one because I think there's more of a simple fix than a lot of the other teams, and that's the H-Town Hoopers. I don't know if a lot of people would consider them underperforming, but they're 1-2, and to me, both of those losses were, they were avoidable in a sense. There was the ATLians game where they started trapping, did a little too much of it. They were getting beaten it, and it just didn't work out. Look, what we've seen from this team is an incredible amount of usage for Corey Yams, and Corey Yams has been phenomenal. Yams, he's averaging around 19 points, 9 rebounds, almost 4 assists a game, 2 blocks. I mean, on 48% shooting from the field, which isn't insane for a big man, but it's serviceable. I think my issue with this team, or I think the issue with this team, is the lack of offensive diversity. It really has been
Right.
throw the ball down to Corey Yams and watch what he can do in crucial moments at the start of the game. That's their go-to. I don't see them running a lot of offensive sets. They're lacking in guys who are going to shoot the ball well, or at least lacking in giving those opportunities to those guys. And I think there's other guys on the team who need more opportunity to be a scorer for them. Guys like Tyrell Thompson was their leading scorer last year, and we're seeing him really not get that many shot opportunities, and he's leading them in minutes played, but he's not getting that many shot opportunities. He needs to be someone they go through more. And then the young guy Almighty Saw, when he's playing, he's got one of the higher PERs on their team. He's a guy that I really think they need to pivot to making more of a focal point of this team offensively. He's a good defender. And then getting shooters out on the floor more and running sets and things that are going to get them shot opportunities. Guys like Johnny Hero, Anthony Johnson, those guys were brought in. They're shooters. They can shoot the ball. But they need to get the opportunity to do so. So I think while Yams is performing at a high level, it's not sustainable the way that they're using him and the way that this offense is running. It's too simple to figure out, if that makes sense. It's way too simple for people to figure out. You're one-dimensional. So for me, that's the first team that it seems like such an easy fix. And I want to see them do better because I really like the roster they've got put together.
Yes, indeed. And another guy like Vincent Magic, for instance, is, he's had his moments, but hasn't really showed out offensively, like I said, because they have been so reliant on Corey Yams. And a guy like Tyrell Thompson was one guy who I definitely thought would take a huge leap in production this year, and we just haven't seen that yet.
We really haven't.
The one team that I was really intrigued by this offseason, and one player specifically, was Beyond the Arch. And that one player I was really interested to see take a leap this year was Daniel Orey. Now, Beyond the Arch, obviously, to start the season, for the most part, they were running with that starting five, of Jerry Bixby, Keontae McPherson, Ori, Johan, and then Paulie Mack.
Yeah.
Paulie Mack, who's still kind of getting acclimated to, the style of play in SimWorld Prep. He's only 15 years old. It's hard to expect him to, shoulder a big offensive load quite yet. Bixby's was struggling to find his shot. And just now, the last few games, you finally started to see Johan come around and be really that offensive threat that he was brought in to be. And then the rest of it is just inconsistencies in the front court, I feel like. Now, you can't fault all that on McAdams, like I said. But one player I look at, or two players I look at, with Beyond the Arch, off the bench, Nick Bowie and DeMarcus Owens. Now, Nick Bowie has quietly had a nice last couple of games scoring and on the boards. And then DeMarcus Owens, I believe, is still currently top 10 in the league in player efficiency rating, who, to be honest, I am surprised is not a starter at this point, because I mean, the dude's got game. He's got,
That he does.
and now what I think really leaves them in they're in an interesting position now because Bixby's hurt. He's out indefinitely. Who knows when he's coming back? So if I'm beyond the arch, I think I have the solution. If you look at the way basketball overall has kind of been played, the style in SimWorld Prep thus far this year, the long ball hasn't really been a mode of success or hasn't really been prevalent for a lot of teams. So if I'm beyond the arch, I play to that. They're not the strongest team from deep. So what I do, instead of going with a small ball lineup, you go with a big ball lineup. You go, and here's how I would do so. You run Johan at point. You go Nick Bowie at the 2. And honestly, I'd look at getting Jamonte Owens. Maybe not, I'd say either running him at the 3 or kind of as a first or second guy off the bench because he has the ability to stretch the floor a little bit too and punish the rim. But I say alternate between him or Keontae McPherson at the 3, run DeMarcus at the 4, and then Paulie Mack at the 5. And this is probably the most controversial take of this whole thing. I'd honestly move Daniel Ori to kind of a 6th-man role at this point.
I mean, he has not had kind of the season that some people were expecting him to have this season at all.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Move him to kind of a 6th-man role on, see if he finds that groove back on, being a spark plug shooter off the bench and, get him, because you are going to need him if you're beyond the arch to make a race to 1 run. You're going to need him. If you're Daniel Ori, you have to find your groove. You have to get into whatever mindset you were in last season and expand on that. If I'm beyond the arch, I look to go that way with a big ball lineup as opposed to a small ball lineup. I know in today's day and age, that's one term you never hear. Yeah, it'll kind of limit them, when it comes to stretching the floor a little bit or like shooting from deep. But if you look at other teams like, Gulf Coast, for instance, like with guys like Kai Killens and Ezekiel Bull, they're not the strongest at shooting from deep, but they've got defense and they're one of the, more efficient teams in the league at attacking the paint and just efficient at moving the ball. And I think this would be in a more ideal, successful situation for beyond the arc.
And I mean, J-Rock's giving out free game right now, but I mean, it's a great point. It's important to emphasize if you're a team struggling at the beginning of the season, you got to start playing around with your lineups, with your rotations, things like that, mixing and matching different, lineups, starting fives that you maybe wouldn't have thought of. Just try to find something that works in some way so that you can build off of that. One thing that has worked for them, Noah Jovic has obviously been the leader. He's the only one averaging in double digits, almost at 20 a game with 17 and a half. But they have a lot of talent. There is some talent that I think needs to be explored more, given a bigger role and see what they can do. But yeah, beyond the arch, there's some things to figure out there. We'll see how Coach Lytle kind of handles the adjustments that need to be made.
I know that's kind of an unorthodox take, but there's too much talent on this team for them to not figure it out and not be successful.
I would agree. It's a tough league. There's a lot of really talented teams, so you kind of have to find what you're good at and build on it. You can't worry too much about playing the guys that you think are supposed to play. You got to find what works, and you got to get people to buy into it. I think that's the big thing there.
Right, and if you look at a team like, Gulf Coast coming into the season, like, what are they? They're 3-1, I believe, coming into as of today.
I believe so.
Yeah, who would have thought they'd be in this position at the beginning of the season? I mean, where they were, even with losing their last game, they've been playing good basketball, and you wouldn't have thought of them as like a high-power offensive team, but their calling card has really been that defense, that interior defense, and then just working its way out. And they just feed off of that. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode of the J Rock Show. Siege, as always, thank you for being on the show.
Of course, it was a pleasure, as always.
Thanks again, y'all, for tuning in. This was the J Rock Show. See the game, be the game.